Good morning and welcome. Lovely to have you all here for the submissions to the proposal for representation arrangement. We'll kick off with a karakia and waiata, and then welcome our submitters. And a warm welcome, especially to you submitters. As I said to you before, you're among friends, so please, sometimes you can't stop yourself being nervous, but please don't be nervous because we're friends. And it'll be good to hear from you. Thank you. I oha ki ranga ki a ranganui, I oha ki raro ki a papatuanuku. Turakina na mia kino ki te paiatia. Uhia mai o korowai aroha, hei taonga mamato, ka puta ki te wai au, ki te ao marama, humie huie taike. What that karakia is about is acknowledging the sky above, the earth below, casting negativity to the horizon and covering us with a cloak of affection and love as we enter these discussions. So I think we're going to do erere, our songbirds.
Yes.
Erere, te awa, tupua. Mai e te kahumanga ki tangaro. Ka waka piria mai, kona piringa. Inga ko. Tomo opoko, tupoho te keye. Ko te awa ko. Ko te awa ko. Erere, te awa, tupua.
Lovely, thank you. Right, now I don't think we were expecting our first submitter, Tania McDonnell, to be on Zoom, but I don't think we've got you there, Tania. If you do manage to get to the meeting, you can hear us, but we can't hear you. We can slot you in a little bit later. So without further ado, I'll invite Peter Edmonds to the table. Peter, lovely to have you with us. If you'd like to come up and take a seat, yes, either of those seats is fine. Yep, Charlie's got your mic turned on for you. The floor is yours. The way we usually roll with these, have a seat, Peter, or would you prefer to stand?
I would prefer to stand.
Great. So the way we usually roll with these submissions is that you have 10 minutes allotted to you, and you can use the first 5 to speak to your submission and then the second 5 to take questions, but you need to be presented and answered your questions within that 10-minute time frame.
Right, thank you.
The floor is yours.
Right. Well, good morning, Mayor Andrew, councillors and Madam Chair. Thank you for the opportunity to address my submission. And my submission was basically that I was in favour of 2 Maori wards and 8 elected councillors, which is a reduction overall. And I'm looking around here, 2 of you get the chop. It's a council made up of 10 people plus the mayor. I favour this combination for these advantages that I'm talking to. This is my opinion. I think it gives iwi a better proportion of the whole, and I think along with that it would be a challenge that they would have to accept for a greater degree of responsibility within AGS of the whole council. And I look forward to an enriched future where we can celebrate and enjoy our taongas, and particularly that the iwi and hapu of our place and the river, which is now all part of us, can contribute to Wanganui and enhance our sense of belonging to this area. So I see that as the first advantage. I think councillors will benefit from the division of the fixed amount of money to pay councillors for their time. I think councillors deserve to be fairly paid, and I understand that the amount of money is fixed, just whether there are 6 people or 26 people. And I just think that divided amongst a smaller group of people would have advantages, and I think it would be particularly appropriate because it would attract family people, because getting close to a sustainable amount to live on. So I think the benefit for the wider society is very obvious. I think a smaller council will give a much clearer focus on issues, and I think the decisions would improve in quality. I'm not suggesting for a moment that the present council is anything other than very good, and in my lifetime I think this council has been remarkably cohesive, so I'm being the devil as advocate for something that's working pretty well anyway. And I also would just like to note in passing that the recent elections of the city of Tauranga, which has a population base more than 3 times that of Wanganui, is based on 9 councillors plus the mayor. And I'm certain that councillors in the future will need to focus far more so on council or core business responsibilities that councils have throughout New Zealand, and hopefully ditch some of the things that seem to have crept into the council, such as these council-owned business enterprises. I can't see them doing anything other than being a hindrance to council, and I think the performance of many of those things are pretty woeful. In fact, I'm pretty ashamed of what I can see as a natural business person, the performance. I just don't think it works. And finally, I am appreciative of the opportunity that this submission process gives to people at large, and I would like to thank the council sincerely for the whole process. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Yes. So are there questions for Peter?
Thank you, Peter.
Rob?
Peter, this council, the 3 of the last 4, those elected to council were first term. Do you think by reducing the number of councillors, it will make it more difficult for new people to get on council?
I think it'll make it easier,
Yeah.
because I think it'll make it far more competitive. Like, no, I'm not looking particularly at you, Rob, but thanks for the question.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, good question. Yeah, but I think it would absolutely open up opportunities for the public at large to have a go, and that's the whole purpose of it. Trying to make this city a better place.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks, Rob. Andrew?
Yeah, look, thank you, Peter. This is probably a bit of a rhetorical question, but do you believe by reducing the number of councillors, you talked about 9 in Tauranga, maybe 10 here, there could be various models about how we do that, but do you think that it would attract a different type of person that wouldn't be attracted in the current scenario of 12 plus a mayor?
I think it would attract a wider section of potential candidates, because it would be seen as attractive rather than it's often seen as onerous to people of real talent to put the time into council for little return in their views. Like everybody likes money in their pockets, with respect, and often it's, I've heard it plenty of times at large that people say, oh, why would you stand for council and get peanuts for our input? I actually disagree with that as a person. I think if you want to contribute, it doesn't really matter what the quantum of return is at all. I mean, that's just my personal attitude, but in the wider sphere, I do hear that a lot. Yeah.
Right, thank you.
Any further questions? No further questions? Well, thank you very much, Peter. Really appreciate you taking the time to talk with us this morning.
And I've left a copy for everybody too.
Lovely.
All right?
Thank you.
Well, for 10 of you.
10 old ones.
Nicely done.
You can look after them. So.
Yeah. Thanks, Peter. Colin. Welcome, Colin.
Thank you. I will sit down, thank you.
God, it's gold. The floor's yours, sir.
Oh, thank you very much. I think there was a picture to come up.
That's all right. Always takes a little while for the technology to catch us up. It's a good thing. It's how we like to keep technology.
Allows me the hands to stop shaking.
Yeah. It'll be great.
Did it?
We won't start your time until we've found the picture, Colin.
Oh.
So, is that all right? Is that how you'd like us to do
Well,
it?
I'm happy to proceed. It's just that the picture referred to one of my opening address, opening items.
We'll give Diane a minute.
That's it.
Lovely, thank you.
Morning, Madam Chair and councillors. Firstly, thank you for the opportunity to speak to my submission and introduce you to my great-great-great-great-great-grandfather, Kaupa Te Atou Tū. Numerous people have asked me why I'm bothering to address this committee, and they believe that council does not listen to the wishes of the community, but fires ahead on their own private agendas, and that the whole process is sham. Some councillors and council staff seem to forget that it's the ratepayers who pay them and appear to arrogantly think that they know better than the community they serve. My response is, based on the record submissions forwarded during the long-term plan, council does listen. Unfortunately, it appears that only when it suits you, but not on the major issues that the community is concerned about. However, I'm here to speak to my submission on council's proposal to introduce a Maori ward, and I realise this is only part of the review process, but I think it is quite an important part at the moment, to dedicate the 2 seats to council table for the ward. I understand that it is to give Maori a greater say in council activities, despite the fact that most of the integral functions that council deals with affect everybody and not one ethnic group. I would comment here that I think the calculation for the number of seats appears to be at odds with the guidelines and the formula and the legislation, and that, in my understanding of the numbers that were available to be used, is 1.488 seats, which according to the guidelines and the legislation, anything below 0.5 is rolled down. Anyway, that's something that probably could discuss with others who've done those numbers. Secondly, contrary to council's claims, It did not consult widely with the community. And I've based this on Council's workshop briefing notes, which the consultation appeared to be focused on Marae and iwi groups. I think decisions based on 511 people's opinion is hardly consulting widely with a community of 40,000. Thirdly, I don't think Council has clearly enunciated to the community the extent of Māori already have in their views being heard with regards to council business. In this, I refer to the street naming group. This group determines the names of any new street created by developers and the possibility of renaming existing streets. This group comprises 2 iwi representatives, a council member, and 2 community representatives who are nominated by council. And I'll put it in the council's street name guideline priority list is 1, traditional or appropriate Māori names, 2, historical persons or events, 3, geological or topographical features, and 4, personal names of special service. Previously, street names were nominated by the developer, the person who pays for and installs all the infrastructure in the new street. I also refer to Council's iwi liaison group, a group that I understand meets 16 times a year at a cost to the ratepayers of approximately $10,000 per meeting. Nobody I have spoken to knows what they actually do. And all resource consents are required to be approved by iwi representatives before Council will process them. All parties have 20 working days to respond to consents. However, iwi have no such time restraints. It can take months until iwi approvals are received, and they are costly. These delays and associated costs have a major effect on the financial viability of developments. These are a few of the areas that iwi are already extensively involved in council decision processes. Before proceeding with a decision on Māori ward councillors, I believe the following critical questions need to be addressed. 1. Will all iwi quasi-quango groups be abolished if a Māori ward councillor is established? 2. Will all of the district iwi groups and individuals that the councillor is their voice at the council table to give the Māori perspective on all things council? I believe both of these questions must be answered in the affirmative if a Māori ward is to proceed. And getting back to the Māori ward submissions, I only received the details late last week and no summary was attached. I've not had time to do a full analysis, but have focused on responses to questions 8, which was about the council numbers and should there be a Māori ward, and 9, which comments regarding question 8. There were 190 submissions. 75 were in favour of a Māori ward, although very few answered question 9. 94 were against Māori ward. Most answered questions 9, referring to wards based on ethnicity as being racist, undemocratic and divisive. One submitter, I think, rightly pointed out, our ancestors fought wars for our right to elect our representatives, and this proposal undermines our democracy. 21 were unsure. The question 9 comments were varied and reflects, I believe, potentially the confusing wording of question 8. Now, I can remember at least 2 excellent Māori councillors who were voted onto council by the community at large, without the necessity of a Māori ward. They were Rana Waitai and Rangi Wells. Mr Wells served on council for 4 terms and was deputy mayor for 1. Mr Waitai was an elected member of parliament before being elected to our council. Both of these men achieved their positions on their own merit. Māori ward's obviously a major topic around New Zealand at present, and I would refer council to the Curio market research poll that was undertaken in June this year. The poll was conducted in accordance with the Research Association New Zealand Code of Practice, and the sampling error was plus or minus 3.1%. The poll asked, who should be the final decision maker on Māori wards? The options being local mayors and councillors, or local voters via referendum. The results were 23% in favour of local mayors and councillors, 58% in favour of local voters via referendum, and 19% were unsure. And a very interesting statistic that came out of this poll was the voting preference of Te Mati Māori supporters. Their results were 16% in favour of local mayors and councillors, 67% in favour of local voters via referendum, and 16% were unsure. If the council wishes to establish Māori wards, you're engaging in what I believe a most insidious form of racism, that of soft bigotry of low expectations. You're insulting all Māori by saying you will afford them a special treatment by letting them sit at the council table as you believe that they are unable to get there on their own efforts and merit. Personally, as of Māori descent myself, I find this offensive, insulting and belittling. Now I expect you're going to say that the recent was only a submission and not a referendum. Well, Wainui actually had a binding referendum in 2019, the results of which were to be applied to local body elections to be held in 2022 and the upcoming election in 2025. The referendum was about the basis of the electoral poll in a voting area system, as it's known as at-large, or a ward system. The at-large won by 10,373 votes to 2,327 votes. That was 81.3% in favour of at-large. Wainui District Council has a binding referendum of no wards until after the 2025 election. The government has legislated very clearly of what is required before a Māori ward can be established. Council should take note that if they wish to bring in Māori wards, they are required by law to hold a binding referendum in the 2025 local body election. I believe that would then allow for, if passed, would allow for Māori wards during the 2028 election. I do not believe Māori wards are necessary. However, I would abide by a binding referendum from the whole of the voting population. And I will close with, I believe, a relevant quote from Thomas Sowell. When people get used to preferential treatment, equal treatment seems like discrimination. Thank you.
Thank you, Colin. I think we've got about 1 minute left, or just over 1 minute left for questions.
I should have waited a little bit longer, shouldn't I? Slow down.
Yeah. 1 minute to go, so Josh, better be good, Josh.
Thanks, Colin. I've got a few questions. I'll see how many of them I get through. The first one is around the consultation process. So you mentioned that it was insufficient in your view. Can you talk to us about what a consultation process would look like for you to find it acceptable on this issue?
Well, I think it needs to be more widely spread. Like a lot of the surveys, etc., are purely confined to those with access with computers or IT literate, although I use them when they go wrong. It's a major disaster. So, yes, as I said, based on the information on the workshop, it appeared to me that it hadn't been a wide area net. And I think that was probably clarified in the number. You only had 511 person respond to that out of the over 40,000 people in the district.
So we're at time, but I'm just going to let Charlotte ask one very quick question. Charlotte?
Thank you. Thank you, and thank you for your submission. So Māori wards is a proven way of increasing engagement from Māori. Without Māori wards, what is your suggestion to increase engagement from our Māori community?
Well, I think the engagement, it depends on the individual. And I think there are enough people who in the Māori community who would be able to stand and would probably get elected to council. But as I said, the increased engagement, there is already a significant engagement opportunities for Māori that are actually achieved and are doing now. So as I come back to this last quote, do we have the same facilities for Chinese people, ethnicity, or Indian? I sorry, I think you need to be at large for the benefit of the whole community.
Thank you, Colin. Really appreciate you taking the time to speak with us this morning. And for someone who suggested to me that he might be nervous, I think you did exceptionally well. So thank you.
I still am, and I hope we're friends too.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Pardon? Colin, would you like to leave us with a copy of what you've written? Would that be okay? And we'll copy it and send it round the all 12 councillors and the mayor. John, welcome, Mr. John Anderson, who is not a stranger to these chambers. Welcome, John. You've heard my ramble about 10 minutes. So if you want to allow time for questions, John, it'll need to be within the 10-minute envelope.
I'll be brief.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Start now. Philippa.
Mr. Mayor, Madam Chair, councillors, thank you for the opportunity of being here and talking face to face. I value that. Firstly, I'd like to start with a quote from last Thursday's Whanganui Chronicle. In order to have a rational, let alone constructive debate, everyone needs to agree on basic facts. Like you, I have read all the submissions to this proposal. I was not there at the time, but online I've heard your discussions when you decided on the proposal. Relatively recently, societal changes have brought about greater diversity both worldwide and in our own community. Diversity in economic terms particularly, but also in relation to ethnicity, values, even gender. COVID-19, increased mobility and new technology have all had profound impacts. Compounding on these changes is the trend that has resulted in over half of those entitled to vote in local body elections failing to do so. In some respects, the concept of democracy is under threat. So, in my view, tinkering with the current representation model is simply not addressing the problems we face. Furthermore, reliance on statistical evaluation of small sample groups is practically meaningless when so little background information is provided at the outset. My plea to you is to look wider, to think deeper, and to make bolder decisions. Thank you.
Oh, that was brief.
Well, I think I have the longest submission in front of you, so yeah, I didn't have to say too much more.
Rob,
Yeah.
you have a question.
Yes, thank you, John. John, being a past councillor, what is your comment about the way the council can work with a lesser number of councillors than are represented at the moment? If that comes down to we lose 2 councillors, as your experience before, would that be an advantage?
It might be an advantage to those that were councillors because they could command a slightly better return for their efforts. But if we're talking about democracy, the smaller the number you would expect would decrease the diversity around the table and so representation of the community as a whole. If you take it to the ultimate extent, you finish up with a dictatorship. Dictatorships are very efficient.
Well said. Thank you, John.
Any further questions? Oh, sorry, Andrew.
That's right. That's fine. And thank you, John, for your submission. Look, I know we're talking about the representation review in a wider sense. In regard to the people around the table, depends on the kind of discussions and the debate that you would have. It changes the dynamics. And you talked about bolder decisions for council, and I'd like to understand what you mean by that, because from our perspective, you make a bold decision and you get hammered for it. If you don't make a bold decision, you get hammered for it as well. So just keen to understand how that plays out from your perspective.
Sure. The way it plays out is the way it's structured in this little statement here, or plea. And so there's an order of events that happen to make bold decisions. And first up is gathering the information and in council's case, disseminating that so that a wider understanding of the issue can be obtained, and the backup for the decision is then clear to the ratepayers, to the public.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Charlotte, would you like to ask a question?
Yeah. Yes, thank you. This is actually to you, Madam Chair. I'm assuming that you lot have a list of speakers in front of you. I do not. Can I please just have the submission number for John's submission, please?
189, it's on page 378.
Thank you. That's everything from me. Thanks.
Thank you.
And thanks for your submission, John.
How much time have we got left?
3:49, 3 minutes 40 seconds.
So we've got nearly 4 minutes left, John. Is there anything else that you want to talk to us about? I guess within the ambit of this subject. Oh no, we've got Josh is asking a question.
Yeah, thank you, John. I'm just rereading over your submission here, and you've asked the question around and I'm quoting here, the fragmented district-wide ward system, and you've asked for analysis on the advantages and disadvantages of that, and why we haven't considered it. We did consider the idea of a ward system quite thoroughly as part of the process leading up to this proposal. So my question is whether or not you have a view on a ward system more broadly, and I'm including geographical wards in that as well.
Well, it's a case which I alluded to right at the start there. There's no perfect system. So there are advantages and disadvantages to the ward system when you're thinking of having wards throughout the district. There's one advantage, for instance, is that it's much easier for somebody to stand in an individual ward because they don't have to spend the sort of money that is expected nowadays, and if you want to get onto the council, you've got to appeal to everybody in the district, and that precludes a lot of people that can't afford the money to do that. Whereas in a ward, in a broken down system, the ward is more like a neighbourhood, and you can drop leaflets or meet people face to face. So that's just one advantage of the ward system. It's something that local government will be able to explain you know, in terms of comparisons. But does that answer the question?
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, I think we've exhausted all questions. Thank you very much for your submission and taking the time to speak with us this morning, John. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our last submitter is DC Harding, who is zooming in. Oh, here he is.
Kia ora.
Kia ora.
Kia ora, kia ora.
How are you this morning?
I am well, thank you. Yourselves?
Good, thank you. Well, I'm good. The rest of them, they look pretty good too. Anyway, the floor is yours, DC. The plan is 10 minutes is your allotted time. If you want to allow questions within that 10 minutes, you will need to do it within the overall envelope of 10 minutes.
Sure, that's fine. So thank you for having me here today and allowing me to provide my oral submission. I'm just going to start my own clock because that way I can keep myself on track. So it's probably no shock that I'm here to talk about a specific topic, and that is Māori representation. But I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the history about that. And prior to that, I just wanted to pick up on some of the comments that I took out of the submissions. So Māori wards are racist. Are Māori councillors funded by Māori ratepayers? The answer is yes, because shock horror, Māori own homes. Māori wards are undemocratic. We'll get to that. The decision to establish Māori wards was not put before the community for a decision. We are one people and Māori wards are discrimination. We don't need Māori wards, they're just racist. What about European wards? We just heard that prior. I do not believe in Māori wards. It is divisive and hinders our desire to be an inclusive community. Why did you not ask the question, do we want Māori wards? You're glossing over the issue. My assumption is that was in from this the actual submission process. There is no need for Māori wards, and there were many, many other comments that reflected these types. So for those who are listening who don't understand, Māori wards are available and are democratic because of the Māori Representation Act of 1867. If you can't read some of this has been sent to you, is my understanding. Māori was never referred to as Māori prior to the European arrival. Māori were always individual whānau, hapu, and iwi. So as I go about this, it's really important that you keep that as a perspective. The Māori Representation Act allowed for four seats, the northern, eastern, western, and southern. The only way Māori could be represented at this point in time widely was to establish separate seats through the Representation Act in 1867, although the government of the day could have opened up that to allow Māori onto the quote-unquote general ward or general seat, but they chose not to, and Māori were only allowed to vote under this act. When could Māori vote on the general roll? So in 1967, it became possible for anyone to contest any seat, whether Māori or general. So if you're on the general roll, you can contest a Māori seat and vice versa. Between 1893 and 1975, those persons who were more than half Māori descent were allowed to vote. Weren't allowed to vote, sorry, on in an European electorate, as they were known back then. It was mandated by the government who was Māori and who wasn't. So if you were fortunate to be less than half, you had the legal right to be on the general roll. That is discrimination. It wasn't until 10 years prior to my birth that my biological father was entitled to be on the general roll. So I just want to put that into perspective. He is still alive. What does the Māori roll do for Māori now? It forwards the ability to vote on kaupapa Māori issues. It allows us to use Indigenous lenses to help make decisions. It helps us to put a viewpoint of Māori at the table, though in general this council has done a good job and has good relationships with Māori. It provides an opportunity for Māori on the Māori roll to democratically elect people that look, sound and believe in kaupapa Māori issues. And there are many more reasons why that is the case today. So why is this important? Sorry, I'm just going to tell Alexa to stop. Alexa, stop. It answers many of the questions and statements that I referred to at the beginning. It proves the following. Māori wards are actually democratic because they are part of the New Zealand voting system. If they were undemocratic, it would mean that they didn't meet the legal threshold, and they do. and we need to stop comparing our democratic system to those outside of our borders. We live in Aotearoa, New Zealand, and these seats are democratic. Māori wards are not racist because they are no longer based on Māori culture alone or Māori race alone. Anyone on the Māori roll can nominate any other ethnicity or race into these seats, whether general or local. Māori roll enrollees can also be nominated for the general ward and stand for election as long as 2 people from the general ward nominate. So it's really important that we have that understanding. I just quickly added this in because I was quite annoyed at one of the other submitters who said that the District Council did not hold a community-wide comprehensive representation review. You did, and I attended majority of those, including the community meeting that was held at the War Memorial Hall. This was widely publicised across the Wanganui Chronicle, Midweek, River City Press, and I personally saw all of them. More at the end of the process, more were in favour for the establishment. And representation reviews are democratic. They are a tool of democracy and therefore should be seen as a legitimate form of democracy. And we can't pick and choose what part of democracy we are wanting to engage with. At the end of the day, I know that I've had robust conversations with others around whether or not I think decisions that come from the community should be binding. I have my own view on that and will die on my sword regarding that, but that's all right. People who are upset and accusing the WDC of being undemocratic are themselves arguing against a democratic tool that was used to have Māori wards established in the first place. Part of my submission was about community and rural boards versus Māori wards, and I just want to make this distinction. This is how I kind of see it. Community and rural boards are afforded an extra vote for those who live in the community. So they get to vote for the councillors, the mayor, and their representative. Māori wards are 1 person, 1 vote. Just want to make that distinction. Those who live in the community board areas get to choose who represents them in order to get the views of the rural community. They also have this for also as the 12 councillors that they help elect 1 person, 2 votes. Māori ward councillors represent the entire community as a whole, but are held accountable by the democratic Māori roll. They do not have an extra vote for issues such as the environment, which is part of the rural boards. It is still 1 person, 1 vote. If you're rich enough to own land or have inheritance from someone who purchased land or live in a location where there are community and rural boards and you have an extra vote, Māori wards are always 1 person, 1 vote, no matter where you live, unless you live in the rural area. So referendum 2025, designed to allow democracy, allegedly, but it also allows the community to decide whether or not the Māori role can be fully actualised democratically or silenced. The referendum is designed as a tool to potentially oppress the democratic right of those who are on the Māori role. The referendum segregates the use of actualisation of the Māori role and not for any other form of representation at local level, and the referendum is a direct example of true racism, division, and community disunity. These are my recommendations. Recommendation 1, out of all of that, all representation decisions are then put to a referendum. This would provide true equality across democracy for Wanganui if Wanganui is truly worried about a particular part of democracy or representation, then I believe all forms of representation should be put to referendum. And I don't believe that would cost anything extra because the referendum already has to go ahead should you choose to keep Māori wards today. Recommendation 2, if the council votes down Māori wards, then I also believe that community and rural boards should also be voted down. And I understand that that's not going to be a popular recommendation. However, it's how I see democracy in this scenario working out, that everybody truly gets 1 person, 1 vote. I do want to point out one thing regarding rural boards and community boards. People who live in urban areas use community and rural board areas. We use the beaches, we use the roads, we use community areas in those spaces. And we in the urban area do not get a say on how money is spent in those areas. And so therefore, if you want to look at what division looks like, I would probably start there. But that's it from me. And I thank you for the opportunity to come and speak today, and echo my thanks to the council for hosting this. Kia ora.
Thank you, DC. We've got 1.5 minutes left. Are there any questions? No questions?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, what's wrong with me? I can't seem to see red
And I
lights
just,
today. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Away you go, Rob.
yeah, thank you for the submission. Just, just seeking your opinion. Maori, 47% of Maori enrol on the general roll, not on the Maori roll. So nearly half Maoris won't be voting in the Maori wards. Do you think that's democratic?
Yes, because they have the choice to be on whatever role they choose to be on. I would like to point out, though, that more people went to the Māori role at the last election, the last general election when the Māori electoral role option opened. And so, as you point out correctly, we have more people on the Māori role than we do on the general role, which tells me that the more Māori are more interested in being on the Māori role than on the general.
Well, the comment that is often made in submission is that Maori want to have the opportunity for voting for everybody around this room, not just one or two people. So what's your comment about that?
The majority of the people that I've spoken to have a different opinion to that, and I'm quite happy to put that up against whatever is in a submission. And we saw that coming out when you actually ran the Māori Awards representation review anyway. We had more people come out in favour of Māori Awards than we had less. So I'm perfectly happy to put that up against whatever somebody else has written in a submission, which was less than what you gained in the last one.
Right, thank you, Rob. We're at time, but I will allow Charlotte, seems to be your spot today, Charlotte, to ask a last quick question.
No, that's okay. I was just going to ask about your position on the number of councillors, but it's pretty clear that you support 10, right?
I do. Yeah, I do. And that's simply because I think at having 10 people, more work can be done. I think financially it becomes a little easier for councillors as well. And I want to thank the councillors for the work that you do. I know I see a lot of negative comments online geared towards you guys, and where we all may have differences of opinion, you all equally work just as hard, and I thank you for the job you do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. Really appreciate those comments and taking the time to submit and indeed attend our meeting today. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
We're at the end of the submissions part of this proceedings today. We'll close this part of the meeting and then open, I think, in about I think we'll go for half an hour just to allow this to settle. I think we've got Colin's written submission, although I do note, and this is for your information as well, our submitters, the matter that we've got before us today is not actually about the Māori wards. It is about the representation in general. So thank you for bringing the information to us. It will certainly be considered, but I think we'll take half an hour and then reconvene at, it's 10:54, so we'll go for, say, 11:20. We'll reconvene at 11:20 for deliberations. A final thank you to our submitters today. We really appreciate you taking the time and coming to talk with us. Thank you. Kia ora. Okay, good morning again and welcome to the deliberations part of our proceedings today. And the deliberations are about the local election 2025 final proposal representation arrangement. Just a reminder, and you'll have this reminded to you again, that the Māori wards are outside of the ambit of this meeting. That will be discussed at a later meeting and decided on at a later meeting, council meeting in fact. So, we're going to welcome to the table Sasha and Anna, presenting the only business item we have on our agenda today.
Ati Māori elected members, good morning to you and to our community. My name is Anna Pallamountain and I'm Council's Democracy Services Manager. I'd like to acknowledge the 190 members of our community who took the time to share their views on the number of councillor positions, retention of the Whanganui Rural Community Board and the overall representation arrangements proposed for the 2025 local elections. Your contribution is a valuable part of the democratic process and it helps our elected members make informed decisions. Elected members, in front of you is a deliberations report, plus the submissions received. Any insights we've heard from our submitters today also must be considered. Before handing over to my colleague Sasha Matthews, who will present the findings of this consultation process, I'd like to remind everyone that the topic of Māori wards is out of scope for this part of the representation review. The Council made a decision to establish Māori wards on October 2023, and in response to legislation introduced by the Coalition Government, will consider reaffirming this decision at the Council meeting 3 September. Thank you.
Thanks, Anna.
Thanks. If you're following along or want to look at the PowerPoint later, you can find this presentation on page 397 of the report you've got, and you can also find the full volume of submissions on page 15 of the agenda. As a reminder, here is what the initial proposal looked like. We proposed having 12 councillors, with 10 representing a general ward and 2 a Māori ward. There would also be 1 mayor elected by everyone, and we would keep the existing Rural Community Board. During our 5-week engagement period, Councillors Michael and Josh hosted an on-the-couch session, which got over 600 views. We also held 3 community kōreros across town. Unfortunately, only 2 members of public joined us for these, which means we'll definitely be looking at better ways to engage with everyone in person next time. We also posted several notices on social media and in the newspaper. While the turnout wasn't what we had hoped for at these events, we still received 190 submissions between July 2nd and August 4th. We know that that's a small number compared to the 49,000 people who live in Whanganui, but it's an increase from the 130 submissions we got during the preliminary survey, and a big improvement from the 10 submissions we got on the same consultation back in 2019. The demographic breakdown of submissions pretty much matches what we normally get, with most submissions coming from people aged 65 and above. So as a reminder, we asked 3 questions in this consultation. The first, do you support keeping 12 councillors? The second, do you support retaining the Rural Community Board? And finally, do you support the proposal overall? We chose to break these questions down because we wanted to get a clear sense of what our community thinks about each part of the proposal. And as you'll see, most people agreed with keeping 12 councillors and a community board, but there was a lot of disagreement with the proposal overall. As we go through the results, we'd like to highlight some comments from the community. These are direct quotes and offer valuable insights. We'll focus on main themes, but if you're interested in a deeper dive, you can find all of the comments in the volume of submissions. So the first question about retaining 12 councillors. 58% of the respondents agreed, 37% disagreed, and 5% weren't sure. Those in favour mentioned that the current system works well and stressed the need to maintain a sufficient number of councillors to effectively represent our growing population. They also noted that having more councillors allows for a fairer distribution of workload. On the other hand, those against the idea pointed to research suggesting that boards and councils can function efficiently with fewer members. Some respondents also reminded us of the preliminary survey results, which showed support for reducing numbers to 10. Additionally, there was a belief that fewer members might lead to higher productivity. Moving on to the second question about the Rural Community Board. 67% of people agreed that we should keep it, 13% disagreed, and 20% didn't know. Supporters emphasise that the rural community has unique needs that require a dedicated mechanism like the Rural Community Board. Some also noted that more people are moving to rural areas, so there needs to be equitable representation. However, some were against it, questioning the board's role and suggesting it might work better as an advisory board. Others felt that the General Council could address the rural community issues sufficiently. Now on to the third question about the overall support of the proposal. 39% of people agreed with the overall proposal, 50% disagreed, and 11% didn't know. Those who agreed thought the proposal was fair, welcomed Māori wards, and believed that the structure matched our population numbers. They also expressed satisfaction with how the current system is working. Just give you a minute to read through a couple of them. Meanwhile, those who disagreed had a common theme, the belief that democracy shouldn't be race-based and that Māori words were not needed in Wanganui. Some also had concerns about the changes to the rural community subdivisions, feeling that rural areas were being absorbed into urban sectors. And I'll just give you a minute to read a couple of those as well. Again, we do want to remind everyone that Māori wards are out of the scope of this review. Much like long-term plan deliberations, the next step is for you to ask any questions you might have of council officers. The chair will then guide us through a discussion. By the end of these deliberations, you will have decided on a final representation arrangement proposal that will go to the full council meeting on September 3rd for adoption. Chair Kate, I will hand it over to you.
Lovely. Thank you, Sasha. I'm feeling the pressure. I'm supposed to guide you through a discussion now. All right. Question. I've got a question, and it's a general one, Sasha and Anna. We got well. I'm assuming that we got quite a good number of written or emailed submissions. We had some folk turn up this morning who's to speak to those submissions, but we didn't have very many at all at a number of hui that were planned around the city because people didn't want to come out for them. Do we automatically assume then that it wasn't a good consultation process or that it needs improvement? Because that's what I took from the introduction.
I don't think it's an example of that it was a bad consultation. I do think that it needs improvement, whether we look at hosting things online or different times or getting it out earlier or trying a different name, or there's a whole bunch of things that we can do. We did look at other councils to see what kind of consultation they held as well. A couple of them did Zoom sessions, but all of them were after work between 5 and 7. We considered doing ones, say, at Majestic Square or in town during the workday to catch some people maybe on a lunch break and things like that. But it's all things that are on the table for the next consultation we run.
Cool. I'm hearing continuous improvement.
Indeed.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Good answer. All right. We've got a few. We'll take Josh first, then Peter, then Ross.
Yeah, thank you. Just a question around the numbers of councillors versus the I guess the representation of the overall population. There was a submitter this morning who called into question our proportionality, and so I just want to get confirmation that we have followed the appropriate formula under the legislation and that we're all right.
We certainly have.
Perfect. Thank you. That's all.
Peter.
Yeah, just a quick question. The split between online survey results and written results, can you tell me those?
Probably about 10 were handed in through libraries, customer service, and sort of mailed back to us. So 180 online and 10 written.
Thank you.
Ross.
Thank you, Chair. I have 3 questions, if I may.
You may.
Okay. I'll get the toughest one out of the way, and it has to do with consultation. I'm not a favour of large hall public meetings because they can get out of hand. Was there any consideration of testing the water with a public meeting at the War Memorial Hall that was like an educative kind of presentation? And if so, why was that ruled out if it was considered?
We didn't necessarily consider like a sort of group meeting engagement process. We have seen in the past that things like community corridors don't bring in a huge crowd. So we sort of decided against trying to bring in a crowd for a topic that isn't as exciting as others, perhaps.
Okay.
I find it very exciting, but...
Okay, thank you.
Very diplomatic, Sasha. Thank you.
Yeah, good response. Second question. I looked at the submissions, but I'd like your comment. To what degree was the perception that if you have less councillors, you save the ratepayer money? How, number-wise, I didn't have time to go through the whole 190 to find out how many. Do you have an impression or a number of how many people said, less councillors, we save money?
Not a lot. Probably 3 or 4 sort of mentioned it. I think I saw one that was specifically the only comment left was that if we have less, either rates will go down. We did have in all our consultation that wasn't the case, but I understand that it's...
Right. Yeah. And my last question, and thank you, is the Māori seats issue is very topical and has been for quite some time. And I know that Māori seats is not the topic today.
So word your question very carefully.
I am, Madam Chair. Do you perceive or do you have a comment to make that topic may have affected people's understanding of 10 plus 2, 8 plus 2, that may have interfered, in some way skewed their responses?
I think so. I think that there is a real, it's a very, very topical matter at the moment, and we can see by the do support the overall arrangement. We can see here that 50% didn't support the overall arrangement. However, it was in opposition to Māori wards, a lot of it, so I think that has played a part.
I thank you.
Helen, then Rob.
Thank you very much. This decision today sets representation for the 2025 and 2028 elections, excluding Māori wards, is my understanding. So my question is, if we decided to put all of this decision into a binding referendum, for our community at some date, at what point would that be possible, given that we are going to make this decision today?
No, I don't believe so. I think we need to put an arrangement in place for the 2025 election, and that the Māori wards component will be dealt with either through a referendum, should the council decide to go that way. However, I don't think that this, given the timeframes, a referendum would work in this instance for the entirety of the representation arrangements.
Just to add to that, the decision we're making today is the proposal that will go to council on the 3rd of September to make that final decision.
I do appreciate that. It was really the technicality of would it be possible to put all of this to a binding referendum at our next election, which would wouldn't take effect at 2028, just as we might be required to by the government for Māori wards. I know that's probably putting a question that you might not actually be able to answer categorically, because it's...
What I can do is come back to you and report back to elected members, and then speak to that at the council meeting.
I think David might want to chip in. Is that all right, Lance?
You'll need a microphone.
Yeah.
Sorry to put you on the spot.
Through you, Madam Chair, I was actually just going to say what Anna said there, which was let us go away and do a little bit of work on it, because the representation review is for 6 years. Your referendum would be seeking to implement it halfway through. So I think we need to do a little bit of work before we can answer the question.
Okay. Thank you, much appreciated.
Thank you. Rob?
Yep, thank you. There's 67 councils in New Zealand, and everyone seems to have the same problem with submissions. So in your research, have you done some benchmarking to see other councils that actually do better than us? Is there any evidence that other councils do better than that?
I haven't seen or looked at every council, essentially. No. We do have councils that we tend to jump back to because their comms strategies sort of match ours, and they do tend to be getting around the same sort of numbers as us. It is a hard thing to do for all councils.
Thank you.
No further questions? No, Charlotte, you don't have any questions? No. All right, thank you very much, Anna and Sasha. We appreciate all the work that's gone into this, and your very succinct and considered paper and responses to our questions. Diane. All right, so we've got a recommendation in front of us that is management's recommendation. However, I am slightly going to change that recommendation and suggest to you that that instead of going for the 12 councillors plus the mayor, that instead we change the recommendation to 10 councillors, 8 from the General Ward and 2 from the Maori Ward. And the reason why I'm putting that to you this morning is because I've been particularly persuaded by one of the submitters this morning who talked about efficiency and effectiveness and the smaller number of decision makers, whilst acknowledging at the same time that the submissions, I think, were about 57% in favour of keeping the status quo. That said, I'm suggesting to you that we have in our recommendation 10 councillors.
I'll second you on that.
I think Josh just pipped you at the post, Charlotte, but thank you.
I have that note, it's just taken a moment to
Madam Chair, can I just speak on that, please?
Yep, just a minute. What I'd like to do is get the recommendation up before you on the screen.
Before you do that, I wanted to discuss whether you've actually got the right to do that. Normally, what would happen is that someone would move an amendment and alter the figure 12 to 10. I don't believe that when the agenda has been published, and this is a public meeting, that you can change the recommendation that's on there without the process of making an amendment.
Okay, thank you. So, Diane or Anna, would you like to respond to that?
So essentially, there is the chair can put up an alternative recommendation. That's something the chair is able to do. There's nothing's been moved and seconded other than what the chair's proposed. So essentially, it's not an amendment; it'll just be an alternative recommendation. And if this was to fail, we'd revert back to what was on the paper.
Yes. Well, is it different when you have published the agenda?
I think the answer that you just got was in full knowledge that the paper's been published, Rob.
Yeah. Can you just quote the clause of the standing orders that cover that, please?
Just bear with me, Councillor Rob, I won't be a minute.
Madam Chair, while the staff are looking into that problem, can I suggest that we table this decision, because I would like to know what the outcome will be if we, Helen's point of when we do the referendum. You know, I'd like to know that because if this is binding, then there is very little point.
This is a recommendation to council. So the decision we're making today will be to recommend to council that is the decision they take. So I would imagine that Helen's question, or the answer to Helen's question, can be accommodated before the meeting of the 3rd of September.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah, cool. I should have bought a chocolate fish, Rob. And the gnarliest question of the morning.
Just finding it.
Madam Chair, can I just ask a further question, please? The recommendation to have 12 councillors, when that was put to council previously and voted on, was that not a council meeting where that was done?
So
therefore it's a past resolution.
No, you're talking about the proposal for consultation.
Yeah. And the proposal for consultation that went out with a preferred option.
Well, Anna can probably answer that in a minute, but I think that this committee has the delegated authority to approve items for consultation. So that would have been the process that it went through, rather than council. But Anna can clarify that for us. Okay.
No, just yeah.
So we'll see if we can frame this a different way. What David's suggesting is what I've actually done is gone with option 2 rather than option 1. I mean, the options are in the papers. It's my understanding that it's a management recommendation and the chair can do yeah, as long as it's within the subject of the meeting. Oh, we'll get this sorted. Yeah, we'll adjourn for 5 minutes. Thank you. It's coming. Thank you. 9.5, Rob, and that was the clause that Anna and I talked about before the meeting. So that's what we're doing. Although I have to say, if there's so much disquiet around the table that we shouldn't be doing this, I'm happy to put up management's original motion, see if it'll get moved and seconded, and then I'll move an amendment. However, if it's okay with the meeting, I just want to hear from the rest of the meeting. Are you happy? Like, it's in standing orders. We all happy? Anybody thinks that we shouldn't deviate?
I need you.
Jenny?
The vote's going to tell us. We just need to get on with it, please.
Yes, we do.
I'm very happy with the motion that I seconded, Madam Chair.
Okay. So?
I'd be very happy to second the other way, the
okay.
management's. I'm just letting you know that there is a mover and seconder should you wish to go that way, Madam Chair.
Yeah, well, you may well end up doing that if this doesn't get... Can we be quiet, please? Thank you. Right. We have a moved and seconded recommendation. The only bit that is changed in your papers is A, where we've changed to 10 councillors, and B, 1, where we've changed to 8 councillors. C and D are exactly the same. But what I'm suggesting we do is speak to the full suite of recommendations, but I will take the voting for A and B separately from C and D. And if A and B do not pass in the current format, then you're welcome to, before we move on to C and D, you're welcome to put the recommendation or a variety of, a variation of the recommendation that is in our papers.
So we're going with the initial one first.
So I'm asking, so those are the recommendations, A, B, C and D have been put.
According to the...
Yep.
They've been changed here.
So you've changed them?
Changing them back.
No, don't change them back. Just leave them as is. Thank you. 10 and then 8 at B1. Yep. All right. Would anybody like to speak to the recommendation?
Can I just get a point of clarification just because I don't have the screen in front of me?
Sure.
I just want to be very, very clear that we're now voting on 8 at large and 2 wards. Correct?
One ward, two councillors within that ward. And this is a recommendation to council.
So we're voting on 10 councillors, not 12, right?
That's right.
Thank you.
Right, Josh, would you like to speak?
Thank you. Yes, I would. What was that for? Look, it'll come as no surprise to anyone around this table that after having considered all the recommendations and all the submissions and read them all thoroughly, that my view around 10 councillors as opposed to 12 has actually not changed. In fact, it's been strengthened by the strength of argument put forward by one of our submitters in particular this morning, Peter Edmonds, who I think articulated the case for 10 very well. But before I get into that, I just want to address the point around consultation and engagement with the community. And I want to make the point that council made every opportunity possible, not only during the formal consultation period, but in the initial engagement period, to allow the community to have their view expressed on the composition of this council and how councillors are elected. We're always going to struggle with getting high numbers for a proposal of this nature. I wish everyone shared the same level of excitement and enthusiasm as I do about representation reviews, but we've got to put it into context and remember that we have just gone through a really lengthy long-term plan where we consulted and engaged time and time and time again with the community, and the reality is I think there's probably just a bit of fatigue out there. But that said, we still got a really decent number of submissions for this proposal, significantly up on when we did it last in 2019. So it's actually an improvement, so I just want to put that on the table. In terms of the Rural Community Board question, I do think that it has its place, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking on that point, and I do support them remaining with improvements. The question of 10 councillors versus 12. So Peter Edmonds made the point that it does give a clearer focus and provide a more efficient form of decision making. And I want to reiterate one of the arguments that I made before we embarked on this process, which was around 10 councillors providing more opportunities for councillors to be engaged and to have, I guess, greater decision-making roles around this table. And I received some criticism for that, but I just want to re-emphasise it again that when a councillor is in a position, whether it be chair, a deputy chair, an advisory group appointment, an external board appointment, it does give a greater level of focus for those councillors because they are required to really hone in on more information and to be across issues at a greater depth. And I don't think there's anything wrong with putting forward that argument. And with 10 councillors, it would naturally create more engagement because there is I guess, an implicit pressure, if you like, to be more engaged because there are fewer people in the room. So I think it's a valid point, and it's one that that Peter made as well, and I just really want to emphasise it. The other point is around the competitive nature of an election process. When you have fewer seats around the table, it does require you to campaign harder, and that's good for democracy because there's more opportunities for the public to engage with the candidates that want to represent them around the council table, and this is a positive thing. And yes, you know, there is potentially a risk that it could result in lesser diversity around the council table. But again, I'll make the point that this council has grown in diversity since the last representation review. And the decision to include Māori wards means that we guarantee Māori representation as well. Even if we have to go to binding referenda, we still guarantee that there will be Māori ward councillors sitting around this table for at least one triennium, regardless of what the result is. So ultimately, I'm not too concerned about the diversity argument because I think we will have achieved that regardless. So I'm going to leave it there because I haven't actually got a lot new to offer in terms of my arguments, but I am strongly supporting 10 councillors and I think it would deliver the best democratic result for this council as well going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Josh.
Yeah.
Ross?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. There goes my speech, pre-prepared. This morning's events have got me wanting to just ignore everything I've typed up that I wanted to share. The subcommittee on representation came back with a recommendation of 8+2. When council met following that, the full council, we said we'll go to the public with 12, 10+2. We consulted with the public. The public participated more than previously, 190, and came back with a clear indication of the status quo, which at the moment is 10+2. So we had council saying 10+2, we had the public saying 10+2, and this morning we're trying to confirm that we're going to go to our official full council meeting in September with 10+2 or 8+2. I'm sorry, but this feels, I know it's a process, and I've had it very carefully explained to me what this process means, and people's views and minds can change. We were 10+2, the public was supporting us, and now with this alternative possible resolution, I know I'm not going to be liked for saying it, it's like a second bite of the apple by the losing group to get this through one more time. Good luck. Sorry, I'm sulking.
Thank you. Just a matter of clarification, I think I voted for 12 last time in the consultation document, if that's what you're alluding to, Ross. Glenda, Andrew, Philippa and Rob.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Yes, 58% of the submitters voted to keep the numbers at 12. So I also was a bit swayed by one of the submitters this morning who said the lesser the numbers, the lesser the opportunity for diversity around the table, and I do agree with that. So I won't be supporting 10 councillors, I will be supporting 10 plus 2, 12 councillors at this stage. And I would also like to remind the public that the remuneration pool to council doesn't change whether it's 8, 10 or 12 councillors. The cost is still the same, it's the distribution to the councillors that change, and we really do need to remind the public about that because there has been a lot of talk about that. And just to, I actually would expect that every councillor would be fully engaged around the table, whether there was 8 councillors, 10 or 12. That's our job. That's what we're elected on, and I would expect that that wouldn't change regarding how many councillors were around the table. So I won't be supporting this as it stands for 10 councillors.
Thanks, Glenda. Andrew?
Yeah, look, thank you, Madam Chair. Look, I support this revised resolution, which is to reduce the representation from 12 to 10. And it's based on, not just today, we had some submissions, but I have also spoken to people in our community as well. I mean, just when I get a chance, and there are definitely different views. When we talk about a survey of 57% in favour of retaining the status quo, that's not comprehensively. It's not a comprehensive mandate for change. And when I hear the arguments for and against, there always will be, and you can look at both and accept arguments on both sides. But in this case, I do believe less is more. I think with 10 councillors plus a mayor, there will be slightly more focus. You've got less people, greater ability to invest time in council, more accountability per person, and I still believe we can capture the diversity of community views. And I would like to think that those people around the table would be there to listen and understand. And when you listen, you gain diversity just by listening, because you're open to other perspectives. And I think it will lead to more efficient decision making. Now, when I say this, I'm talking about going from 12 to 10. I'm not saying in a massive swing or anything, or a massive difference. I'm just thinking it'll be slightly more concentrated, and hence my case for less is more. I've done some quick number crunching. The remuneration difference, the way that I see it, I'm happy to be corrected on this, is about a $10,000 difference per councillor, moving from 12 to 10. Now, I think that in and of itself would attract others who would not otherwise be attracted to sitting around this table, that couldn't otherwise afford it. But with an extra $10,000, I'm not saying it would bring a whole lot more in, but I think it'd attract a new person, a new type of person, a new persona to consider running for council, because they can see that it is able to make their life work. So, you know, we heard this morning a submitter talk about Tauranga. They've got 9 plus a mayor. Rotorua, 10 plus a mayor. Ruapehu, South Wairarapa, 9 plus a mayor. And that's just a small number of other councils who have got less than 12. And I'm saying if it's good enough for them, it's good enough for us. And I think we're not doing something new. We're doing something that others are already doing. So, and it's working for them. So I can't see why it wouldn't work for us. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. Jenny, I skipped over you before. Would you prefer to go before Rob and Philip? At the end? Okay. Rob?
Thank you. Well, welcome to the new council if this passes, because that's what we've got here without the Zoom, 10 plus 1. So let's talk about the greatest myth, that this will improve decision-making of council. How will that happen? You know, what the number of councillors we've got now gives a greater opportunity for more of the community to be heard, for more views to come around this council table. That's what we want. We don't want to narrow it down to some narrow faction. People have said, the Mayor just said these other councils. New Plymouth has 14 plus 1. Palmerston North has 15 plus 1. Hastings has 16 plus 1. Auckland has 20 plus 1. You know, that is a myth that other councils have got less than Wanganui. There's a few, but the majority have got either equal or more. You know, and when we look at great decision making by bringing the numbers down, the word Tauranga Council was used. That was used as an example. They destroyed themselves through factionalism. And factionalism will destroy this council if it's not careful. It nearly destroyed the council back in the Vision Day, when decisions were made outside this chamber and hands were put up to vote which way it was going to be. And there was a majority there. The smaller the numbers, the greater the opportunity to engineer that is. So what I want to talk about, though, I think is the worst feature of reducing the numbers. And that's, it makes it harder for new people to get elected. You know, there's going to be in the general ward 4 less opportunities for new people to get elected. Now, if we go back to the last election, 3 of those were our first termers this year. That's what will happen. That's the pressure that's going to go on if we reduce the numbers. We're just going to make it harder. And talk about diversity. Tauranga used an example again with 9. 7 males, 2 females. You know, there is no evidence that reducing the numbers will work better either for council or the community. So the only advantage that I can see, the only advantage put up, only realistic advantage, is that people will get paid more. And if you think that paying an extra 10,000 is going to increase the calibre of candidates, I certainly won't be putting my tick beside the person who'll come onto council because of $10,000. I want to see them represent wide issues in this community, have a broad knowledge of how the city works, how this council works. Not an extra 10,000, thanks. Okay.
Thank you, Rob. Philippa?
Got a few thoughts here. I'll try and get them in some order. We're making a decision for the next, 2 election cycles, so it is a big decision. Yeah, 190 the 190 submissions and 58% have supported retaining what we've currently got for a start. So why would we go against that? And I would suggest to you that the arguments are not strong enough for less councillors. Council is not a board. There's a board meeting kind of after this. It's called the new CCO and ED meeting. It's basically like a board, and it's going to have 5 councillors on it and a mayor and a couple of independents. Great. It's a board. It's making a focused decision in a certain area. A number of us sit on other boards. We're not a board. We are fully elected by our community to represent our community, and it's the diversity and breadth of views that make us make the right decision. As tough as that is, the 6 sevens, but that is actually that is who we represent. I heard even going into the Tauranga elections that the previous commissioner suggested that the Tauranga Council, or that councils, and Tolly suggested, because she was the commissioner, that council should be a mixture of put there by the minister and put there by the people, like our health board used to be. And the Minister of Local Government said absolutely no. Councils and communities should fully elect their people. So let's know the difference. We are a council that looks at a wide breadth of issues. It needs a wide breadth of people. We've got some new younger members. We're going, and you know, with the greatest respect, one of them isn't here today with a family. No apology, no disrespect, but it gets more difficult. You can't, if you're going to have a council that if you want to get 2 or 3 more youngies on, it's good. There's good stuff, but there's other stuff. They will struggle to be at the table more often. I've been at this table since my children were 3 and 4 years old, and it was damn hard. But you go and look at my record, particularly in those early years, it was strong. And I'm one of those 4 lowest counselling members at the last election. So sure, some might say time for me to move off. But, you know, when you've been here 7 or 8 terms, you know, you're going to come down the pecking order, people, so get used to that. But I would also say to you, you need a variety of new blood, new ideas, younger people, more, you know, and you need experience. You really do need experience. And, you know, I mean, with the greatest respect, in 1 minute I found the standing order, and it might have been talked about, but we sat offline for about 15 minutes, and in 1 minute I found the standing order, just giving a little bit example of experience. Look, the submitter that our chair referred to, and his name has been used, but yes, he apparently gave some reasons why he thought less councillor would be more effective and efficient, is what I heard. But what he talked about, and actually is written in his submission, that for too long we've often fitted the male, pale and stale profile at the table. Well, we've got even men and women at this table, haven't we? And now we're going to have a couple of Māori members, so we're going to even improve our diversity. And so, yeah, I guess, yeah, I'll just put that out there. Yes, an advantage would be, and I think it's always a mayoral decision, that less councillors will likely mean people will get more remuneration. But that really is the only obvious advantage. But we want people that it's not about who, it's about who's at the table. It's about what their experience is. It's about what they bring to the table, not what's going into their bank account. So those disadvantages around reducing democracy, yeah, less representation. I just want to put that out there again. Block voting will be easier. I was on the Vision team. I came in on the Vision ticket, but by the second election, and I was only on there a year because of the by-election, I left it because I can tell you it was block voting. There were meetings prior, and yeah, you know, we need to be very careful about that. And that, why do you think Tauranga got a commissioner? Because they've got so lower councillors. You know, I'm all behind Mahi Drysdale. I'm sure he can sort it out. But it'll be difficult with 1 woman and only 9 councillors total. Yeah, and less councillors will be very clear, limit the chance of new councillors, of new people coming on board, and we need refreshing, 1 or 2. You know, if it's my turn to push down the order, I've won and lost races. I don't care about that. If I put my hand up and I lose, that's life. That's okay. But we shouldn't be doing it for the wrong reason. So I'm going to make my last point here. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. It isn't broke. We've got 12 councillors. We've got half male and female. We're bringing on 2 Māori councillors. We have lots of wide representation of ideas. We have a few close votes. That's fantastic. Thank you. I will not be supporting this resolution.
Thanks, Philippa. Jenny.
Thank you. I guess the advantage of listening to everybody else means you can mop up all the comments. I thought it was interesting that a previous speaker spoke strongly about the community consultation and then proceeded to speak against the result of that consultation. Really interesting. I listened to these arguments and found them mostly weak. Yes, 10 will receive a few more dollars. My math was 8, yours was 10, but to me that is not a material enough amount to make someone make that dramatic decision, because the number is so damn low anyway. The efficiency argument. Isn't that a function of systems, processes and leadership? It's not a function of numbers. So I would like to buy into that, but I'm sorry, I can't. I can't find how that efficiency is simply going to come because we drop 2 people off. The mayor is correct. 58% to keep 12 is not a mandate for change, but rather one to stay at 12. We heard that there are a number of councils have fewer numbers than we do, but we didn't get any evidence that they functioned any better, and we've heard how well Tauranga has done with those fewer numbers. Not a model to follow. And I repeat that the risk that's already been spoken about of factions and block voting. I mean, we had it here with Vision. We kind of had a real good attempt at it with the 4 horsemen and so on. And that does not lead to good democracy. It does not. It diminishes what we can do in this community. So I've been very, very proud of the councils that I've been on, and that we have been individuals. We've had strong political points of view, but they haven't come into this room. We haven't block voted. We've functioned as individuals who have, yes, we coalesce from time to time, but with different people. And that's a diversity and the strength of this council. So at this point, as much as I'd love to be convinced that 10 is a better number, I have yet to be convinced, and I'll be supporting 12. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. Well, just as a final comment before we put the recommendation, I've sat round boards for more years than I care to remember, and 13 is too much to be efficient, totally efficient and focused. I think we would achieve more by having 11 people round the board, possibly even less, but that's not up for an option today. All right, so all those in favour of the recommendation? So we're just putting A and B. All those in favour, please say aye.
Those maybe you probably have, but have they been read for the public, Kate? Just I'm wondering if they're online. I think it's fairly important.
That the Strategy and Policy Committee recommends that the Council, in accordance with Section 19N and Clauses 1 and 2 of Schedule 1A of the Local Electoral Act 2001, adopts the following as its final proposal for representation arrangements for the local elections to be held in 2025 and for subsequent elections until modified by future decisions. A, the Whanganui District Council comprise the Mayor, elected at large, and 10 councillors elected from wards. B, that the Whanganui District is divided into 2 wards, the Whanganui General Ward, comprising the entire district as shown in the map in attachment 3, is represented by 8 councillors, and the Whanganui Murray Ward, comprising the entire district as shown in the map at attachment 4, is represented by 2 councillors. All those in favour, please say aye, and I'd ask you to raise your hands. Against? The motion is lost. So we'll go back. Pardon? So Rob is moving the option then that under A, the Whanganui District Council comprise the Mayor, elected at large, and 12 councillors elected from wards, and B, that the Whanganui District is divided into 2 wards, the Whanganui General Ward comprising the entire district as shown in the map in attachment 3 is represented by 10 councillors, and the Whanganui Murray Ward comprising the entire district as shown in the map at attachment 4 is represented by 2 councillors. All those in favour? I've got a mover and a seconder, thank you. Pardon? Yeah, do we need to speak to this? I think it's pretty clear what everybody thinks.
Just that the divisions have been noted on the recommendations, please, for the minutes.
They always are, and you've had how many years to understand that?
I didn't really need that comment, but thank you.
All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Charlotte, did you vote for that? You voted in favour of that recommendation?
I mean, I'll just briefly explain that there was very compelling arguments for both sides, and I felt quite on the fence, and I'm happy. I initially did vote for 10, but it failed, so I'm happy to vote for 12.
Great, thanks for clarifying that. So that motion is passed. So we're moving on then to C and D. So that was moved and seconded by myself and Josh. So that the Whanganui District will retain a Whanganui Rural Community Board consisting of 7 members elected by the electors from 3 subdivisions as detailed in attachment 5 and 6. And D, the composition of the Whanganui Rural Community Board will be as follows: Whanganui 2 members and Kaitoki 2 members. Kaiiwi 3 members plus 2 additional members appointed by the council representing the Whanganui General Ward and or the Whanganui Maori Ward. I've left off E, F and G, so I'm going to put those as well. So I'll move those. Josh, would you second those? So E, the council will issue a public notice of the final approval within 14 days of this resolution, including notification of the right to make appeals and or objections. If necessary, the Local Government Commission will hold hearings on appeals and or objections to the final proposal on the 19th of November 2024. And G, the Local Government Commission is required to complete its final review by the 10th of April 2025.
Can I just ask a question about those resolutions, or recommendations rather? How do they dovetail with the fact that we still need to approve the overall representation review at the council meeting? I would have assumed that these recommendations would have been more appropriate at that point, rather than...
Well, we're recommending, they're all a recommendation to council, so
yeah, okay.
I think that seems pretty sensible. All right, any further discussion? Those are the recommendations that have been moved and seconded. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? 1 vote against, that's Peter. The motion is carried. Thank you. I think that's the end of our meeting.
You're saying that this is a recommendation that goes to council, so we go through all this again?
I hope not.
Thank you. Excuse me, thank you. We're still in meeting. Yes, this is a recommendation to council for the 3rd of September, Rob.
Okay.
So we'll close.
Then there's the Maori Ward one we've got to...
Yes, that will also be on the agenda for the council meeting on the 3rd of September. All right, can we close the meeting now? I oha ki runga ki a Ranganui, I oha ki raro ki a Papatūānuku. Whakatairanga, te kupu, te kōrero, te mahi. Ki te pō o te whare, hei tonga, hi mahi a muri, ka puta ki te whae au, ki te ao marama. Huie, taiki.
Right.
Thank you.